A little while ago I reviewed a can of Spanish pig's ear casserole. Today I want to see if I can replicate it, or something like it, using wood ear fungus. These are dried wood ear fungus that I've shown in a couple of videos prior to this one. I think these turned up in one of the Here's What You Could Have Foraged sections in my 5-day budget challenge. I'll link to it in the video description and in this card. These are a fungus that grows on elder trees, and in their fresh state they're like jelly and they are very ear-like. They resemble human ears. They dry up though to this crispy state like this. In fact, this will happen quite naturally. Sometimes in dry weather you'll find them like this on the tree, just these little crispy brittle shards of, seems almost like plastic. This fungus dries itself and then rehydrates naturally, so sometimes these will dry up on the tree, they'll rehydrate, and they will continue. I've got a feeling that they actually come back to life after being rehydrated. Anyway, the texture of these is actually quite similar to pig's ears that I had in that casserole. They are kind of jelly-like, slightly crisp when they're cooked. So I'm going to use these today to try to recreate that casserole. So we've got to rehydrate these, and this never gets old. I'm just going to put them in water, and then we'll do a time lapse so you can see how quickly they rehydrate. It's quite fascinating. Alright, so just going to put those into cold water, and I will just submerge them. Okay, and I'll just leave that. So these are the mushrooms after about 30 minutes of rehydration, and you can see why they're called wood ears. They're really very ear-like. And the texture, from experience of eating these, is very similar to the texture of pig's ears actually, so I think we're on the right track. Anyway, I'm going to give these a little rinse because there's always a little bit of forest still adhering to them, and then we'll slice them up and cook them. Now, the canned pig's ears recipe contained paprika, onion, chili, salt and cornstarch. I think that was about the only ingredients. I'm going to be adding a little bit of garlic and a bit of savoury from my herb garden, just because obviously we're not cooking with meat here, so the garlic and the savoury will just contribute some additional flavour. And also I think that will just really combine well with the dish. I don't recall there being any pieces of onion in the dish, in the canned pig's ears. So it's possible that the onion in there was onion pulp or paste or something like that. I'm not going to grind these down, these onions. I'm going to just peel them and dice them fairly finely. Now, one thing that's not naturally occurring in the ingredients for this version is fat. So I am going to add a bit of olive oil. Obviously the pig's ears were cooked in pork fat, but they are naturally quite fatty. So I've used a bit of olive oil here, and obviously that will impact the flavour of the dish, but I don't think it will do so in a bad way. Those onions have softened down really nicely. I'm just cooking them ever so gently. I don't really want to caramelise them. And now chili, garlic and savoury. Okay, ear time. So these are the wood ear mushrooms, rinsed and drained, and they smell sort of fruity, almost like apricots or something. And all I'm going to do with these is just kind of cut them into little squares and pieces. I don't want to destroy the shape of them too much. So let's just see how that looks. I might just go through and pick out any bits that are really big there and just give them another cut. I'm really looking for pieces that will fit on a spoon. Onions are just starting to take a little bit of colour, and the garlic is just starting to brown but not burning. So in with my wood ear mushrooms. And now a heaped teaspoonful of sweet paprika, and really just a pinch of smoked paprika. The dish I had wasn't all that smoky, so I don't want to overwhelm it with the smoky flavour. A little bit of salt. Just going to cook that really just so the paprika gets a little bit of a fry. Right, that is as far as that needs to go really, because they don't need cooking any more than this. They're going to get cooked in a slow cooker now. They're going to get stewed. It doesn't seem like there's very much of it, but I think they're going to absorb some more liquid as they cook. So non-stick pans don't really get a glaze or anything or a fond on them, but you do get some flavour sticking to them. So it would be a shame to waste that. Probably a couple of hours cooking, I reckon. One thing I very nearly forgot, because this isn't meat, it's going to need a little bit of a boost on umami. We could have put some Marmite in there, but actually what I'm going to use is a bit of my homemade porcini powder. This is mushrooms that I foraged, dried and powdered myself. Probably only about half a teaspoonful. And that's just going to give it a little savoury note, similar to what would naturally be present in pork, but obviously there isn't kind of naturally present in those wood ear mushrooms. But I reckon porcini will balance it nicely. I mean, porcini does, after all, mean little pig. Okay, that's had a couple of hours cooking. That's probably all it needs. So I'm just going to thicken it up now with a little bit of corn flour, which I'll mix with a bit of water first, obviously, to make it combine more easily. And so there it is. Looks a little bit darker at the moment, but I'm just going to put this cornstarch in there. It's only about a teaspoonful probably, and I'll let that just cook and combine. That's looking a little bit more gloopy and gelatinous now, which is the desired effect. Okay, well there it is. Quite a little bit darker, I would say, than the canned pig's ears I had, but broadly similar. And it has that kind of weird wobbliness to it that we saw in the pig's ears version. Time for a little taste. It's good. I think it's fair to say it lacks that kind of robust meatiness that you would get from pork, but there's kind of no way to replace that. But this is really nice, and it does have something of that kind of weird wobbliness of texture that you get from pig's ears. I had decided this time to have it just with some bread, which I think was probably what I should have done last time. I wasn't expecting that can of pig's ears to actually melt into such a thin kind of soup. That's very good. And I thought I'd also actually have a bit of toast and avocado while I'm here as well, because that's also nice. I'm really happy with that result. It needed a little bit more seasoning just before serving. It's not the same as the pig's ears casserole, but it has a lot of the same appeal. Yeah, it kind of presses the same buttons, if you like. Just one interesting little tasting note here from Future Shrimp. When I headed back upstairs to edit this video after lunch, I could feel the same kind of stickiness on my lips that I would associate with having eaten something that contains gelatin, which is interesting. So something must have stewed out of those mushrooms and created the same kind of mouthfeel. What it does have, which I really appreciate, is a kind of earthy flavour. I really like those earthy flavours that you sometimes get from mushrooms, and these wood ears, it's really brought out an earthiness in those mushrooms that I don't think I've always tasted before. Now, I know this fungus does grow in Spain, because they do have elder trees in Spain, and I know this fungus is found there, and it's called Oreja de Judas there, Judas ear, which is related to the traditional English name for it. Now, what I don't know is whether they cook it this way. I've tried searching, but I couldn't find anybody using it and cooking it in this way. So I'm really interested to know from any Spanish viewers who might be out there watching, is what I've done here interesting or sacrilege? I personally think that's quite delicious. So there we go, Oreja de Judas guisada. I think that might be what that's called. I'm not sure I got the grammar right on that actually, but somebody will no doubt let me know. I think this is a really nice way of cooking this mushroom, and it doesn't ruin it because that earthiness, which is present in this mushroom, and I think I probably haven't always appreciated, really does come through in this dish. So I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.